Welcome to Lebanon!
The story of Lebanese wine is as rich as any other in the wine world. It's here in Lebanon that some of the earliest winemaking in human history took place. And the modern era of Lebanese wine does justice to its past. Indigenous grapes, interesting blends, unique winemaking, all preserved in a country that has had more than its fair share of ups and downs. But nothing stops the Lebanese people from enjoying life. Whether it's paying homage to their homeland, partaking in some of the best meals on the planet, or living it up in the cosmopolitan city of Beirut, the Lebanese are some of the most hospitable people you'll ever encounter. And a little secret, for reasons you'll see, this may be the most meaningful episode of this show I've ever made. So welcome to Lebanon, and welcome to a very special episode of V is for Vino. What I'm about to say isn't really how I wanted to start this episode, but I don't really see any way around talking about it. Behind me is the site of the Beirut port explosion from 2020. It was the largest non-nuclear explosion in human history. And the wreckage is such a tangible, visual reminder of everything people tend to associate with Lebanon. Civil war, economic strife, government corruption, and every news story I'd seen sold this general narrative, that Lebanon as a country and as a people were broken. So while planning this episode, I asked the Lebanese team helping us, was this narrative true? And is that the story I should tell? Resilience in the face of adversity. And should I be worried about the safety of me and my crew? The answer? A resounding no. Because while all these things are true, Lebanon is so much more than its ongoing struggles. Not only did everyone assure me that we wouldn't have any problems filming, they let me know we'd eat delicious food, drink remarkable wines, see incredible landscapes, and meet a people who were, yes, resilient, but also welcoming beyond compare. Plus, that the capital city of Beirut, where I am now, was vibrant and alluring and would feel right at home in the south of France. This country really isn't dissimilar from other travel destinations you know and love. There's strife, there is poverty, and yes, there has been war. But the Lebanese don't see any of that as what defines them as a people. So many people in Lebanon choose to make wine here, to raise their families here, and to try and help the country move forward. So we're going to talk about the challenges Lebanon faces as a part of its story, not all of it. Because the people and winemakers here deserve your attention not out of pity, but because they're making a product worthy of it. Okay, so before we get started, another reason this episode is so special and why I've always wanted to film here is because, yes, I'm half Lebanese. My great-grandfather emigrated from Lebanon to the US, passed through Ellis Island and all. Unfortunately, no, I don't speak Arabic, unless you count the words related to food anyway. And I'm also not an expert on Lebanese wines, so I'm gonna be learning a lot right along with you. And yes, I brought my brother Brandon along on this trip because him and I have both always wanted to get to know our heritage a bit better. But enough about all that. I had an appointment to get to, and you know that it revolved around food. I'm admittedly not a breakfast guy, unless it occurs around 1 p.m., which I guess technically isn't breakfast anymore. But I ate it every single day during my trip because Lebanese breakfast is criminally underrated, and Le Chef makes a breakfast so great even Russell Crowe considers himself a fan. Oh, and so did Bourdain. Owner Charbel Basile greeted us like he greets everyone here, like you've been friends for quite some time. My dining partner today is Michael Karam, who may be the foremost authority on Lebanese wine. He's a British Lebanese author and journalist who not only has contributed to major wine textbooks on the subject, he co-produced a full-length documentary, Wine and War, and he wrote the definitive book on the topic, Wines of Lebanon, before anyone was taking this country seriously as a wine destination. We say, oh, this guy wrote the book on Lebanon, and we say it rhetorically, but you actually did write the book on Lebanese wines. 20 years ago, there was how many wineries?
Realistically, about 12.
But there was this history to Lebanese wine that also needed to be explored. This 5,000 years?
But between 5,000 and 7,000, yeah. I mean, depending on where you want to start.
I was telling people I'm going to Lebanon. People would say, oh, they make wine there? I say, yeah, they've been making wine there a long time.
Yeah, no, we definitely punch above our weight in terms of reputation. I think you need to go to other wine-producing countries to appreciate, for our size, the variety of grapes that are used here and the styles of the wines.
Breakfast was served, awarma, which is Lebanese diced and spiced lamb confit cooked with eggs. This is the bacon equivalent.
This is the full English equivalent.
And my personal favorite, oh yeah, this is the stuff, full mudamas, which is fava beans with copious amounts of garlic, lemon, and olive oil. I've been doing this every morning. It's so much garlic at 10 a.m. and I'm totally here for it.
Yeah, and if you eat too much of it, it sends you back to sleep.
Yeah, it's some of the best cuisine in the world. And I think the world has picked up on that. If they haven't picked up on our wines yet, which they will, they've picked up on the food.
Well, I think the food and the wine must be sold together, not necessarily paired together, because I think that Lebanese wine should not be pigeonholed with Lebanese food. It's wine, and it should be paired with all food. But I mean, in terms of what the international consumer understands about this country, they got to replace the images of guys with beards and guns and bombs with images of food and wine and arak and mountains and guys with very big moustaches. Once you've sold Lebanon, the idea of Lebanon, everything else will follow after that in terms of prosperity for the country, in terms of tourism, prosperity for the wine industry.
It feels like most cities that I would love to visit in the world.
I feel safer in Beirut than I do in London.
I believe it.
In terms of crime against the person.
Yeah.
I mean, something could kick off here.
Yeah.
But yeah, which wouldn't happen in London. But in terms of my personal safety, it's a safe. And that is one of the kind of neat tricks that Lebanon plays on people. It under-promises and it over-delivers. People arrive here, they're a little bit nervous, a little bit tense, well, what's going to really happen? They get on the plane to go back, and they are fully paid up members of the I Love Lebanon fan club.
Yeah. The Lebanese people, we kind of go everywhere. There's Lebanese across the globe.
The people of this coastline have been traveling for thousands of years. They've had to seek their opportunities abroad, and they're doing it right to this day. And it's made us quite smart people. We're known as business people.
We're known as entrepreneurs.
Entrepreneurs, yeah. We're not known as particularly intellectual or artistic or creative, as much as we are known for just transactional behavior.
What is the mentality of the people here?
My own feelings on the matter is they accept that their lot in life is to always overcome the difficulties that are placed in front of them. 45 years ago, the civil conflict. Since 2010, you had the Syrian civil war, so we had 2 million refugees. Infrastructure stayed the same. 2019, we had the banking crisis. Savings wiped out overnight. But yet, they pick themselves up, they dust themselves down. That word resilience, which is overused, but when it's applied to the Lebanese, it's very apt, and they just get on with it.
Don't you love meeting people who are more articulate than you are? Michael is awesome. His optimism for Lebanon and its wines got me excited for the week to come. But before we head to the vineyards, we need to talk about the history of Lebanese wine. I'm in the city of Baalbek, and this remarkable structure behind me is the Temple of Bacchus. This is one of the best preserved Roman temples in the world. Was built around the 2nd century, and even cooler, this temple was made to honor Bacchus, the Roman god of wine. Evidence includes ornamentations of grapes and vines near the entrance. And while a 2,000-year-old temple sounds ancient enough, to talk about the origins of Lebanese wine, you need to go back another 3,000 years. While not the oldest wine region in the world, Lebanon is close. The Phoenicians of this area may not have invented wine, but 5,000 years ago, they're credited with turning it into an industry, bottling it in amphorae or clay pots, protecting it from oxygen with a layer of olive oil, and using their maritime trading network to share and sell Lebanese wine across this part of the globe. Cyprus, Egypt, Greece, Rome, even as far as Spain. Next came the Romans and the Sasanians and Arab rule. But when the Ottoman Empire took over around the 1500s, wine production shrunk to almost nothing, as the culture had strict rules around alcohol. But in the 1850s, around the end of that period, wine production started up again when French Jesuit monks planted Cinsault, Carignan, as well as a little Grenache and white Uni Blanc in the Bekaa Valley. Then, in 1920, Lebanon, which had been Ottoman territory, was officially mandated to France after World War I until its independence in 1943. This influence is why so many grapes here are of French origin and why many Lebanese still speak French. All was on the up and up, and wine production was growing until the Lebanese Civil War in 1975. By the end of the war in 1990, there were only 5 wineries left in operation. But since then, that number has climbed back up to around 60 wineries and between 10 and 11 million bottles per year. 10 million bottles for an entire country isn't a ton, especially when you take into account that a single large winery in France, Italy, or California may make more than that single-handedly. But you've got to give this small but mighty country credit. It's no bigger than the state of Connecticut, has a smaller population than New York City, and yet Lebanon has a reputation for wines worthy of international praise. The reason it can produce such fine wines is a combination of persistence from the people and an extraordinary Mediterranean climate. Lebanon is blessed with 300 days of sunshine per year, and while it's in the Middle East, it's probably not the desert landscape you're picturing in your head. It's coastline to the west and mountainous pretty much everywhere else. There are 4 wine-growing regions, including the up-and-coming area Batroun in the north, but the majority of the grapes come from the Bekaa Valley on the east side of the country. Like a lot of famous wine-growing regions on the planet, this area is a valley, sandwiched between the Mount Lebanon Range and the Anti-Lebanon Range. The mountains provide natural irrigation from the water runoff, a warm growing area protected from ocean breezes, and limestone soils. Plus, most grapes are planted at higher elevations, between 900 and 2,400 meters. They're among the highest in the northern hemisphere, which helps slow down the hot, dry growing season that would otherwise overripen the grapes. As I mentioned, the modern era of Lebanese winemaking started around 1850, 1857 to be exact, by Jesuit monks in an area not too far from here.
Almost overwhelming because it's so large.
It's awe-inspiring, is
Like-
the best way to put it.
These columns are cut into sections, but they're 6 meters by like 10 meters.
Yeah.
So they gotta weigh 20, 40,000 pounds.
I've seen stuff in Greece and in Italy and in Rome, like this rivals any of that. Even if you don't know anything about history or you don't care about the architecture, you still show up here and you're just like, wow.
Everything was so detailed. Oh, look up.
Oh, underneath. Oh my gosh. You wouldn't even notice unless you look up. That's such a good call. I mean, those are, I think, those are taller, I think, than that.
It's crazy.
But what do the Italians think
About that?
of this? Is this as impressive as some of your own homeland ruins, I would say? This is worth the price of admission.
Without a doubt.
Eternal question of how did they make it?
Aliens?
Located in the Bekaa Valley, Château Ksara is not only the oldest winery in Lebanon, it's also the largest, albeit still small by global standards. Founded in 1857 by Jesuit monks on the site of an ancient fortress, or Qasar, it includes one of the Middle East's first observatories, a bell tower to signal meal and rest time for the monks, and of course, a chapel. But the real treasure of this winery was buried beneath the surface, quite literally, undiscovered for centuries. My friend Eli tells me more.
1857, the Jesuits acquired the estate, and they had a school. And when you have a school, a lot of mouths to feed. Okay. So they have a chicken house, a poultry. And one day, it was attacked by a fox. So they had to track the fox, and they had to kill the fox. And this is how they discovered. They followed the fox who entered between those two rocks. So they had their vineyards. They didn't even know that underneath the vineyards existed these.
Oh, that's wild. So right above the...
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
It's 3,600 years old caves. We did the carbon-14.
How wild is that? Built millenniums ago, used by the Romans, lost for thousands of years, and found again by a fox. Eli told me that during World War I, 400 families took refuge for 4 years at Ksara, and during that time, turned the caves into the cellar you see today. I'm blown away by how, like I'm at this crossroads now. Every direction, almost as far as I can see, the cave keeps going.
Exactly, it's 2.1 kilometers.
Wow.
Yeah, which is the 7th or longest caves destined for making the wine, naturally.
In the world?
In the world. We have 1.1 million bottles in these caves.
Oh my gosh.
The particular thing about this cave is that winter as in summer, the temperature is steady.
Yep.
13 degrees, and the hygrometry is 75%, which is the ideal hygrometry and the temperature for aging the wine.
So you ended up with this natural cellar. He showed me how the humidity created a white mushroom-like mold that eventually turned black with age, but didn't affect the wine inside. The natural ventilation from whoever built these caves installed in the ceilings. How they kept track of the wines with notes in bottles so the damp air didn't destroy the labels. And how they're still discovering new areas of the caves. Wines dating back to the 40s, 50s.
I know, I'm scared. I'm not supposed to say that.
And the oldest wine?
The oldest wine that we have.
This one?
1918. It's a complete rag.
But these beauties, they aren't for sale.
This is the treasure that we inherited from the Jesuits, and we intend to keep it. This is really the real asset of Ksara.
Next was a tour with a third-generation family owner, Camille. He explained to me all the sustainability measures they take. Because they're on a natural spring, they use that water in the winery and then pass it through a purification system for use on property to keep it lush and green. The grape intake is 70 meters higher than the bottling line, so they can use gravity rather than pumps to move the wine around. Repurposing the old concrete Jesuit fermentation tanks by lining them with stainless steel for use in modern winemaking. And solar panels are here not only for the environment, but to deal with the frequent power outages that occur in the country. After my tour, it was time to taste.
100% Lebanese grape variety called Merwah, 90 years old vines. They use in marcotage, meaning you have the mother, and then they launch the branches and then they bury it. It's in Douma, it's at 1,600 meters of altitude. And we will see it has really nice crispiness, nice acidity, nice freshness.
Because of the heat, the altitude is what keeps these wines fresh from getting overbearing.
Exactly. There's a particular thing about this one. You have this slight saltiness.
The clean minerality is the first thing I get.
Exactly.
Like really ripe, juicy citrus, medium bodied.
But for a country like Lebanon, having acidity like this natural,
it's really wild.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm shocked at the freshness of all the wines. I love that it brings some of the elements that we like from multiple wines, that clean slate that we like from Riesling, but maybe the citrus character that we like from light Italian wines. Body, a little more weight. There's not really anything you can directly compare it to.
Exactly.
The minerality and the saltiness stands out first, and then after you start discovering more and more.
Mango in it, and it's coming up now.
Bit of
Keep
lychee.
it longer, lychee, and it has complexity. You start with something and finish with something else.
We got to see some of the harvest today.
Here, the winery is at 900 meters of altitude at the center of the Bekaa. As you saw, the harvest is done by hand. We try to maintain this traditional way of harvesting. So we have mainly Syrah, Cabernet Franc, and Cabernet Sauvignon.
The Rhone-Bordeaux marriage, which you don't get to see in France, you have to come to Lebanon for that.
Exactly.
The reserve of the convent, the wine that you used to drink on a daily basis in the convent, the Jesuits.
The daily drinker is what we call it. The purpley Syrah comes out right away.
Exactly. You know, the Syrah is well adapted to this type of climate.
So I smiled as soon as I had a sip because the palate is completely different than what I expected. So I got the blue fruit right away. So I was like, okay, it's gonna taste like Syrah. And then I had the sip. The spice component is spiced, but it's almost like exotic spiced.
You have this leathery from one side, and then you have the spices of the two Cabernets.
And also some of that floral component.
Violet is very present.
Sure,
in this.
violet.
Violet is beautiful, gives more length to it. And of course, the red fruits and the black fruits are really present.
It's got some tannins.
It has some tannin, and this is really beautiful with lamb.
This is what, 14%?
13.5.
13 and a half.
Yeah, 13 and a half.
I mean, that's Bordeaux-esque.
We don't have 15. 14 is the maximum.
Yep.
And this is the altitude.
There's very few wineries on the planet with the type of history that you have here. So honored to share it with you. Thanks for showing me around.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. You're always welcome.
If you come to this country, you'll learn what I learned. You're not going to leave any visit without a lavish spread of food presented at some point. Lunch with the crew was grilled kebabs, fattoush, hummus, baba ganoush, falafel, and lots more Ksara wine. Because in this country, feeding guests isn't just for sustenance, it's a love language. Hey everybody, I hope you're enjoying the episode. I wanted to talk to you briefly about Vino VIP, which is our members only club. You see, we're a small team and we're completely independently produced, which means we can only keep making episodes with your support. So if the show has helped you or helped you pass a wine exam, or if you're just enjoying it, please consider supporting the small business that provided it and join Vino VIP, which is full of a ton of benefits anyway. You get full episodes ad-free, and you also get early access to all our episodes, including our YouTube videos. Plus, you get members-only videos like behind the scenes and commentaries and full-length interviews in our members section on our website. Every quarter, we do a Zoom hangout where you get to hang out with me and we taste a wine together. We do raffles once a month for our members, and we do a big yearly raffle. Plus, if you're a gold or platinum member, you get your name in the credits of an episode, and all our members get access to our members-only Facebook group, which is a great community. Membership starts at just $5 a month, which is less than the price of a Starbucks coffee. Everybody thinks somebody else will step up and support, and their support won't matter, but I promise you it does. So please consider joining if you have the means, and thank you so much to our existing Vino VIP members. Now, back to the episode. We often use the terms Old World and New World to describe wines. And while these labels aren't without controversy, in general, Old World refers to wines from Western Europe, such as Spain, France, and Italy, while New World refers to the US, South America, Australia, pretty much everything else. A lot of times, wines from their respective worlds will have similar characteristics, similar flavors, similar winemaking techniques, and labeling practices. But there is a third category, the ancient world. And this refers to Far Eastern Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Places like Georgia, Greece, and yes, Lebanon. Places on the planet that predate or avoided the Roman influence of vine planting, the places where wine itself was born. What are the hallmarks of ancient world wines? I see it as wines that borrow from the past and present. They utilize modern winemaking techniques and international grapes, but can also reach into their heritage and use grapes and methods from their ancestry. And more, these styles are gaining recognition. Take orange wine, for instance, aka skin contact wine. Very popular right now, but originated out of the country of Georgia thousands of years ago. Using indigenous grapes, also very popular right now. And by using blends and grapes that other places won't or can't, these ancient world wines can yield unexpected flavors. I've seen tasting notes of cumin, sumac, rosewater, carob, kirsch, banana, and incense. Sometimes they just have unique structure and flavor combinations, like a high-acid fresh wine with a dried, fruity character, which is a bit of an oxymoron. Or sometimes these wines simply drink like the wines you know and love from other places in the world, though usually at a much better value. My point is that ancient world wines are exciting, and Lebanon is no exception. Because of its historic French influence, French grapes and winemaking techniques are common in Lebanon. The most popular white grapes are Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Viognier, Semillon, and Muscat, while the most popular reds are Bordeaux grapes like Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Petit Verdot, and Mediterranean varieties like Syrah, Cinsault, Carignan, and Grenache. But something unique, you'll see the Bordeaux grapes and the Rhone grapes blended together, something you would almost never see in France. Cabernet Sauvignon with Cinsault and Carignan, for instance. There are no hard and fast rules in regards to grapes planted and blending, giving winemakers freedom to make interesting combinations. Because of the warm climate here, wines tend to be fairly full-bodied, and the reds with strong tannins. But these are generalizations. Lately, lots of winemakers are making light to medium-bodied reds using Cinsault or planting fresher whites at higher altitudes. And tons of winemakers are dry farming, farming organically, hand harvesting, and using native grape varieties. All things we love to see happening in wine regions whenever possible. 2 native white grapes in particular are common: creamy, honeyed Obeidy and nutty, floral Merwah. In general, as the modern Lebanese wine industry continues to develop, winemakers are doing more and more to define their identity and style.
This is what I'm talking about. It's so big.
It is the biggest shawarma I've ever seen. Oh, look at him shave it off. Look at that. Yep. Thank you. First bite, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Eve said we haven't had shawarma until we've had it in Lebanon. Oh yeah, that is good.
She's not wrong.
The garlic sauce is literally perfect. So garlicky.
It's bright though.
All right, so for those who don't know what shawarma is, it's basically spice, either beef or chicken, all sorts of spices, and then they layer it, and they do it on that spit, and they slice it off. And what he did was really cool. He dipped the pita in like the juice you saw on the bottom, like all that juice that's on the bottom, he dips the pita, and then he slathers the garlic sauce, the fries, the pickles, the lettuce, and then he shaves it off.
The meat is so juicy, even though it's cooked like that.
The meat
It's
is
crazy.
literally perfect. All right, we got trade. I gotta try the beef. Francisco, I got one for you. Alice, I got one for you. I mean, I could have like 10 of these. One family winery in Lebanon, Château St. worked tirelessly to restore one of these ancient indigenous Lebanese grape varieties. So I had to visit them at their winery just south of Zaathe. Before we got into the nitty-gritty, they had laid out a spread. Homemade za'atar bread.
This za'atar is awesome.
That's what I told them, isn't
Yeah,
it?
so
You
good.
could tell they make it. Labneh, olives, local cheese, vegetables from their garden, and grape leaves. The grape leaves are so good. I felt like one of the family already.
So we're 3 sisters and 1 brother.
And 1 brother, okay.
brother, yes.
So he's outnumbered. Are you guys all close in age?
Yes, I'm the oldest one, but with this,
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I understand.
because they will kill me. You know, there's knives here.
I didn't ask the specific age. I never
Don't put
do.
this, huh?
I never do.
Our family started to make arak in 1888. We had a lot of wars, World War I, World War II, the Civil War, you know, but still we were planting and making arak. After the war, everything was different. Initially, my father, actually, he started the business here, beginning of the 90s. He bought the land here, he planted the vineyards, he did a small chapel.
The chapel is beautiful to have on property.
We're strong believers. We're from the Touma family, and Touma is Thomas. We wanted to commemorate St. Thomas. We celebrate St. Thomas's Day, October 6th, every year.
Yeah.
So we'll have like a big celebration. And actually, at the beginning of the harvest, also, we do a blessing as well to bless the season and to bless our work.
So, Micheline, you have another role. You work with the UVL, right?
Yes. We work mainly to promote Lebanon as a wine producing country. We participate in international wine fairs all together representing Lebanon.
To help kind of further the reach of Lebanese wine so more people know about it.
Yes.
So you're the winemaker.
I take their opinion, of course, because if not,
You'll hear about it later.
I'm lucky to have them. We have this bond actually, and this is related to my mom and dad who raised us to be close to each other. But it's also challenging to be a woman in wine. My father encouraged this as well. He gave a role to each one of my sisters because they believe in women empowerment. My grandfather actually, he passed away when my father was 8 years old.
He left my grandmother with 5 kids. Wow. And she was like 36 years old. She had to work in the distillery. And back then in the 40s, for a woman to work in a man's world, if you want, wasn't easy at all. She was like a role model for us.
You were raised with it. It wasn't strange to you when other people might think it's strange or taboo.
Exactly.
That was just normal life. The women can do anything the man can do.
Exactly.
Down in the cellar, I sat with Joe to learn about how he single-handedly brought a Lebanese grape variety back from obscurity. It is truly a family affair. I think this is the biggest audience I've ever had for a tasting. Francisco, show the audience.
A lot of fans.
We have fans. I have seen now that I've walked around the photos of your father everywhere, kind of the patriarch, and got to start what you've done today. So tell me about what you have today.
It's a beautiful story, the Obeidy, that I told you I studied in France. Wine friends, they always tells me why our variety, like the French variety, and why you're not using your own variety. That thing pushed me to go and find why we're not using local varieties in Lebanon. This association in France, actually, it's called Wine Mosaic, and they helped me to analyze the DNA of this Obeidy. It showed that the genes are unique and it belongs to the Lebanon section, you know. I did it by myself, and that's why I'm also proud of doing it.
Now, the whole country has this grape that they can kind of be proud of. This is their grape. It came from here. Nobody else can lay claim to it.
And I had a lot of critics when I first did it. But you know, when it was recognized outside Lebanon in the wine fairs, it got very good reviews. So that's why I made this.
Making a comeback.
A comeback, exactly.
It looks like you do it pretty pure in stainless.
It's in stainless because the idea is to show the real character of this variety.
So the first thing that hits me is a floral component.
It has a mineral also taste. Yep. This is the main character and the floral side.
Kind of a bitter minerality, which I love in wine because that really helps them pair a little bit better with food. It makes you want to take another sip.
And you can find as well at the back like white peach or like fruits, you know. You can't compare it to any other wine or to any other variety. It's really like, it has its own character. All the grapes of this bottle comes from the vineyards around the winery. And here it's a blend of 3 varieties. Merlot Cabernet, of course, this is the traditional, let's say, Bordeaux. But Syrah gives a different taste.
This nose makes me smile.
Yes. Very chocolatey, some vanilla maybe, dark fruits.
The spice from the oak character, the baking spice. Get that ripe fruit character, but in a really fresh wine.
It is, although it's a 2016 vintage.
And you can tell from the age, the tannin has mellowed out a bit. It could go more, but it's just pretty perfect right now. I'm gonna be honest. Like, this is drinking really, really lovely.
Of course.
Black cherry, kind of dipped in pepper. You get some of that leathery. It's plush, but it's still fresh. The spice component is what I keep coming back to. There's such an interesting spice on the finish.
It's a very complex wine for me. Fruits, the spiciness, the oak, the vanilla.
Yeah, God, this is good. I really, really, really enjoy this. Let's ask the family, what did he miss? Hit him. Later on, off camera, after yet another feast, Joe brought out a very special wine from the first years of his family's production. There are only a few bottles left in existence, and he chose to share one of them with us. I couldn't believe I didn't get it on camera until I realized he didn't do it for the cameras. He did it because he and his family exemplify exactly what I know to be the best parts of Lebanese hospitality. I couldn't help but see my own aunts, uncles, and cousins in the Toumas and their warmth. The crew and I left with so many gifts and goodies from them. Wine, candles, homemade za'atar, as much as we could stuff into our packs. So while other wineries in the world may have grander estates, I guarantee you won't walk away feeling quite like this. not all wine in Lebanon comes from the Bekaa Valley. IXSIR Winery is located in the up-and-coming Batroun region, and with some of their vineyards at up to 1,800 meters, they source grapes at some of the highest elevations in the Northern Hemisphere. At the 17th century house and winemaking facility, I met winemaker Gabby to chat about the challenges and benefits of growing here.
En français, ouais?
En français.
Gabby, like many here, speaks French, so we were lucky to have marketing manager Aurélie to help us translate. Gabby's actually from Spain, where he got his enology degree, before moving here to help revitalize Lebanon's wine industry. Also, he used to be a professional rugby player, and funny enough, he isn't the first ex-rugby player turned winemaker that we've had on the show. Anyway, we took a stroll to chat about IXSIR.
Really high up. I mean, when we drove here, we kept going up and up and up. Tell me about where we are.
On est dans la région de Batroun. C'est une région laquelle, historiquement, il a été toujours relié au monde du vin. Les Phéniciens du port de Batroun, ils envoyaient les vins, si vous voulez, vers l'Europe, vers les autres villages de la Méditerranée. Et c'est une région dans laquelle on tenait beaucoup parce qu'il y avait un climat et une vision de ce qui représente très bien ce qui est la culture méditerranéenne.
Tell me about how this winery got started.
L'histoire, elle est très simple. Le Liban, c'est un pays dans lequel il y a beaucoup de différents climats, différents terroirs. On voulait que cette diversité soit vraiment imprégnée dans notre vin. On a des vignes à 1850 mètres d'altitude, on a des vignes à 500 mètres d'altitude, c'est-à-dire que c'est tout jouer avec la diversité et les différents vignobles qu'on a au Liban. Tous ces raisins-là, ils sont amenés ici à la cave. Et après, c'est ça qui va faire carrément notre vin.
I also know that sustainability is really important to you, right?
Il est totalement aux normes européennes. Ça veut dire qu'on récupère les eaux, on a les traitements des eaux, on a commencé avec l'énergie solaire. On va continuer et on sera carrément vraiment au top au niveau sustainabilité, je pense, d'ici quelques temps.
A quick stroll through the sleek modern winery, which was spread across multiple levels. The restaurant, the winemaking area, the barrel room, and finally to the rooftop terrace for tasting.
You know, I thought this was high. This is 400 meters. You have properties that go 1,800 meters, and they probably all require different viticulture, different grapes, right?
Ça change totalement toute la viticulture et toute l'approche du raisin est différente. Ça veut dire qu'on ne va pas planter ni les mêmes cépages, ni le même type de plantation. C'est-à-dire ce que les gens, il faut qu'ils comprennent, c'est qu'ici, on joue avec des différents terroirs, des différentes climatologies et différents cépages. Et c'est ça notre richesse.
You're essentially getting a little slice of Lebanon here, right? A little bit from here, a little bit from there. You kind of represent a lot of the country. I love floral noses like this. Jasmine, white flower.
Rose.
Yeah, roses. And I think roses a lot when I think of Lebanon and Lebanese culture anyway, because there's that rose candy, rose water is used sometime.
C'est ça, c'est-à-dire ce qu'on voulait surtout, c'est que le vin, il représente ce qui est le Liban. C'est-à-dire que la personne, quand il va le goûter, il se sente carrément dans l'Orient.
On the finish, there's a nice kind of bitter minerality. Lots of citrus on the palate. More than I expected, because sometimes, especially Viognier, can be oily, can be stone fruity.
La difficulté dans les vins au Liban, et c'est ça que c'est un des objectifs qu'on a toujours, nous, dans les vins du Liban, c'est avoir de la finesse et pas de la lourdeur.
This wine is similar to the white in the sense that it is a blend of both plots and grapes, right?
Exactement. 3 terroirs très différents, un qui est à 1800 mètres, l'autre il est à 1300, 1500, et l'autre il est dans les 1200 mètres. C'est l'assemblage de différents terroirs, mais surtout c'est la qualité du terroir qui est différente. C'est-à-dire, on a une richesse énorme en calcaire, quand le merlot il est plutôt dans des terrains argileux, ferriques, avec un peu de calcaire.
Very different soil types in addition to the different grapes and elevations. That's some of the highest elevation in the northern hemisphere. Like the only other people who are planting at that are like some places in Argentina, I think. And that's in the southern hemisphere, so that's pretty amazing.
Les vignerons, on n'invente rien, on regarde l'histoire. Dans cette région, il y avait dans cette façade de la montagne, il y avait déjà des vignes plantées avant, et les gens, ils avaient vu que les vignes, ils arrivaient à une très belle maturité. C'est-à-dire que nous, ce qu'on a fait, c'est seulement refaire un peu le vignoble qui avait déjà anciennement dans cette région. C'est pour ça qu'on a planté à cette altitude.
Nose, plush red fruit, cedar oak character. And then on the palate, it doesn't taste hot at all. It's a nice like medium body. Sometimes I would expect these fruits to get into dark black fruit land, really extracted kind of cassis.
C'est sûr qu'ici au Liban, si on veut, on peut faire ce que vous venez de dire. On laisse un peu plus les raisins, le soleil est là, on peut faire des vins hyper puissants, avec beaucoup de fruits noirs, un peu dans les pruneux, tout ça. Mais c'est pas l'objectif. Notre objectif, c'est de faire des vins élégants. Des vins dans lesquels les gens ils prennent du plaisir, et comme on dit chez nous, qui finissent la bouteille quand même, tranquillement. On ne veut pas des trucs trop lourds en bouche.
That's why I preach so much that the place is so important, because people a lot of times will drink by grape. Oh, I like this grape. I like Cabernet or something like that. But if you have it from different places, it can be completely different. And so the terroir is just so important, and it's evidence here. You probably have other wines in your portfolio that are ready now. This definitely will be better, I think, in 5-10 years. I think it'll really shine.
Moi aussi.
You agree? Yeah.
C'est sûr que le potentiel de ce type de vin, c'est des potentiels de 10-15 ans sans problème. On peut le laisser garder tranquillement. La structure tannique, elle est très fine, très élégante. On n'a pas une agressivité en finale de bouche vraiment asséchante.
How great to see a modern winery still respecting and utilizing knowledge from the ancient Phoenicians, who used to export their wines via boats just over the hill.
La prochaine fois, tu amènes le cassoulet. Moi, j'amène la bouteille.
Did you know that on our website, each episode has a page where you can find listed all the wines we had, as well as the places we visited? And while you're there, you can join Vino VIP and visit our members-only section with a ton of behind-the-scenes videos and bonus content. Just thought I'd let you know. In the daytime, Beirut is tranquil as the Mediterranean waves crash on the shore. And until the late afternoon, people seem to stay indoors or under cover as they run their errands and tend to their shops. Around 4, the bluffs start to fill. People fish, children run and play, and everyone prepares to watch the sunset over the sea. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone, because it's something you notice. Lebanon is about 60% Muslim and 40% Christian, and everybody enjoys the same restaurants, the same bars, the same beaches. In a region defined by religious conflict, Lebanon is as close to a model of peaceful cohabitation as you'll find. And speaking of restaurants, you've probably noticed by now that Lebanese cuisine is perfection, and Beirut offers no shortage of dining options. There's always meze, shareable family-style dishes you may know like hummus and tabbouleh, but there's so much more. Spiced rice and meat dishes, kibbeh, grilled kebabs and shawarma. The dishes are all fresh, with lots of olive oil and lemon juice, and so many herbs and spices and grains and sauces. I grew up with these foods, but Brandon and I agreed so many taste better closer to the source. You know, in the 1960s and 70s, before the Civil War, Beirut was a European hotspot destination. And when the sun went down, I got to see why. Beirut after dark is a scene. A cacophony of car horns wakes up the city, and it comes alive as everyone ventures for a night out. After dinner, with dinner, at the bars, on the bluffs, argile, which you might know as hookah or shisha. This is the Arabic water pipe used for smoking flavored tobacco, and it's a communal activity done almost everywhere here. Restaurants serve it for a few dollars a pipe, and servers refresh your coals and change your tobacco. Something about being in Beirut told me it didn't feel right not to have a full-blown Arabian night, so the crew and I head to the world-famous Gemmayze Street to let loose on a Saturday night. I often feel too old for the club scene in the US, but abroad that never seems to be the case. Groups of people, young and old, gather together and buy a table and bottle service. The Lebanese nightlife scene seems to work well no matter what the country's economy is doing. The Lebanese forget about whatever ills they or their country may be going through and instead celebrate what they do have, the company of others and their joy of living. Better than any souvenir, that sense of gratitude is something the crew and I will be bringing home with us. Most people don't know many wine producers from Lebanon, but if they only know one, it's usually Chateau Musar. When the Lebanese Civil War broke out and the domestic market for Lebanese wine collapsed, Serge Hochar took his family's brand across the globe to find international buyers, simultaneously introducing these markets to wines from a strange country far, far away. At least that's how it was seen at the time. But his actions helped put Lebanese wines on the map across the world, and his sons, Marc and Gaston, now continue the family legacy at the winery, which is in a bit of an odd location.
This is an interesting place for a winery. We're kind of on a mountain in a city.
That's correct. My grandfather wanted to produce the wines in 1930, and he thought that putting the winery here in that location would be easier. At the time, the main grapes were coming from Mount Lebanon and not from the Bekaa. And so having the winery here was easier. And also they thought it was safer. In 1930, Lebanon, with its actual borders, only existed since 10 years.
Because who knows in a couple years where the border is going to be.
Exactly.
But here, I guess you're fairly close to Beirut, right? So you're
very close. We're 25 kilometers north of Beirut. And we're at an altitude of 450 meters, which brings us a little bit of cool weather and cool temperature.
There were unique challenges that needed to be overcome as the winery grew in this small space. They even had to install a truck turnaround in the main loading zone. And the winery, being unable to extend outward, instead expanded up and down on multiple levels, which Gaston happily showed me. They still use concrete fermentation tanks, which is important for their signature style. They even bought a bunch of stainless tanks in the 90s after the Lebanese Civil War, only to decide it's not for them. Some things are better traditional, like the method in which they make arak, the traditional Lebanese liqueur, which I promise we'll talk more about later, because the real gem of Chateau Musar Winery is down in their cellar.
Our wines are stored below in a natural, humid, and cool temperature.
Wow, this is absolutely wild. Not just in quantity, but also you just kind of let what happens naturally happen down here.
You have mold which naturally comes due to humidity, then we have insects which arrive, and then we have the natural predator of all the insects, which are the spiders, which develop these cobwebs, and then they protect our bottles, our corks, our wine. We don't remove them, we like them. Sometimes some people ask us, but this is dirty, and so we say, yeah, but it's maybe dirty, but this is the spirit of this area, and then this is for us a protection.
My wife would hate this place, but she would be terrified. But for me, they're part of your legacy too, I suppose.
Definitely.
Your father, he's known for really helping put Lebanese wines in the minds of consumers across the world.
He made his main target to have the world get another impression of Lebanon. The impression of Lebanon was war. And so he was touring the world, doing tastings, doing interviews, and he effectively put Lebanon on the world map.
Up the elevator and into the barrel room for tasting.
We produce 3 ranges of wines, and Chateau Musar is the top range, 3 varietals in equal proportions. Today, the current vintage is 2017, and we are in 2023, 6 years later.
Wineries sitting on bottles means that you're not selling inventory, right? So you have to wait. That's a challenge to do. But I think it's important for you as a winery that people experience the wine the way you want them to experience it.
6 years after the vintage,
6 years.
And it used to be 7 years after the vintage. 7 years is the age of reason for people, but also for wine. Although we recommend to cellar them and to drink them after 10 to 12 years of age. The wine needs time to open up. Our wines don't open easily, so they always benefit from decanting.
This is one of the things people love about your wines. What's fun about them is the evolution. If you're going to get these wines, have them at your house and really see how they change. I 100% agree.
And you see now we're starting to get some dark cherries notes, where before it was closed. And it will change every minute for the first 3-4 hours.
Developed and fresh fruit. It's really hard to explain until you try it. You can get some of those dried fruit characters while still having a wine that is in the leaner side of fruit. There's a balsamic strawberry character. This is a red that to me has a minerality.
Our wines are quite concentrated because we have very low yields.
I mean, I had one sip a minute and a half ago and still on the palate. So I notice you want to try the white wine second.
The Chateau White has such a complexity and has such power that it overcomes the red. So here we have a blend of 2 local varietals, Obeidy and Merwah.
So we've had both of those grapes on this trip, but just on their own. The wines we had were light, crisp, I think very opposite from what this wine's going to be.
We ferment them directly in the barrels and then we store them 6 years before release. Now let's taste this wine. It's a wine which has a lot of character and a lot of complexity, which you must not imagine as a white.
The first thing I get are nuts.
Nuts and almonds.
I would say smoke.
Smoke, a bit of mushroom.
Oh, sure, mushroom. If I was looking for the traditional fruits we would get from white wine, that's not the first thing I get by any means.
This is why I said, forget what you're seeing. Concentrate on the smell, on the nose, on the taste.
Waxy.
And it's starting to switch a little bit to honey.
There's a fermented fruit character.
A bit jammy.
Maybe like orange fruits.
Orange marmalade.
Yeah. I just noticed, is this really 11.5% alcohol?
This is 11.5% alcohol.
The amount of flavor that you get, the amount of weight, the amount of complexity, and those savory notes, it's absolutely wild that that's coming through at 11.5%, because that's like off-dry Riesling territory. That's nobody's making wines, white wines like this at this alcohol percentage.
This is for advanced tasters. It's too unorthodox.
Know what you're getting into.
You need to know what you're going to have so that you appreciate it.
Any episode I make, I look for what makes these wines unique to here. And if people start tasting these Lebanese wines, they will see that they really are unlike anything in the world. And that makes me really happy.
Happy indeed. Musar doesn't equate what they do as Lebanese wines, but rather wines from Lebanon. They don't aim to be the definition of the country, but rather a different experience from any wine you may ever have. And that is the joy of it. I'm sure it's obvious by now that Lebanese food is delicious, and it's much more than quaint family-run restaurants and street stands. Beirut is a cosmopolitan city, and Chef Maroun Chedid has dedicated his career into making sure that his restaurants reflect that. He grew up in the Bekaa Valley and spent 30 years honing his craft before opening Ritage. His restaurant brings the garden of Mediterranean ingredients together with international culinary influence, sustainability, and respect for terroir and modern sensibilities. It was the perfect place for a final meal with my new friends. Before the meal, there was one matter of business left to attend to.
All right, so who has arak for me?
We all have.
Everybody's got it. Everywhere you go, everybody has arak.
My family produced this arak since 1888. Arak is the national drink of Lebanon. It's made from grapes and anise seeds.
Does somebody want to show me the proper way to pour it? Because I was setting up over here and everybody lost their minds when I almost did it the wrong way. So show me, how do you serve it?
You pour in the glass, then we take the water, and the traditional mix is 1/3 of arak and 2/3 of water.
And you see the color change.
The color has changed. Then you add the ice cube.
And the way to have it is that you have different glasses. Once you finish the glass, you don't use it again.
It's almost like the fresh fennel, fresh anise kind of taste.
Vanilla and
very fresh.
licorice, both of them.
Yeah.
You have.
Cheers, gentlemen. Thanks for joining me.
Cheers.
And with that, it was time to start the meal.
Wine number one, we're away.
It's a Chateau Musar white, 2008 vintage.
And one of the, I think, most iconic age-worthy whites on the planet.
Thank you, Vince. It's a wine which needs to be cooled but not chilled. Taste it as a red. Don't taste it as a white.
Savory is the number one thing I would say about this wine. It has all these flavors that one sometimes associates with red wine. Hence why you said, drink this like a red, don't really think of this like a white. From the 5 minutes that we've had it, it's changed, it'll change again. The smoke character comes through a lot.
It's going to change a lot in the next 7 days.
I like the apricot and the peach.
Apricot,
Apricots
sure.
and peach. It
This
has
is
a
very fresh,
citrusy lime side also.
Very fresh,
Yeah, of
very
course,
vibrant.
yes, yes.
15 years later, and so vibrant.
We've talked about the fruit, we've talked about the savory, we talked about the mineral. That's what's fun.
And right on cue, Chef Maroun was here to present the first dish.
Hello, thank you for coming. So this is a shrimp baklava. Inside there is shrimps rolled with baklava dough and baked with a green bean sauce, chives, and abico, which is shrimp eggs.
The crunch on the phyllo dough typically used in baklava in the dessert, but he did it with the shrimp.
This rich, intense white wine stood up to the weight of the shrimp baklava, and because it's a savory wine, went great with the miso and caviar in the dish. And because this wine has acid and the perception of sweetness from its honeyed character, it worked well on a lot of other fronts too. Next was a wine I didn't expect out of Lebanon, a Pinot Noir.
That was my dad's idea because he was a big fan of Pinot Noir, but he insisted to find a good terroir to plant the Pinot Noir in Lebanon. We found the right one in the south of the Bekaa, higher altitude, limestone soil. And what's good in the Pinot Noir is that it's different than the other varieties. It makes you work more, challenge yourself more.
It sucks up that terroir. That's why
Yes.
people love the grape.
Exactly. But for me, it's Lebanese Pinot Noir.
This has ripe, dark red fruits, but it doesn't have the weight and the alcohol that you would sometimes need to get that in other places. It's still so fresh.
Who knows, when you smell it, it's directly, it's a Pinot.
I think it's great that you're unafraid to do it so that other people will say, oh, look, we can make Pinot here.
Yeah, and you need to be courageous, or you need to dare and try.
See,
All right, so next time I come, I want all your Pinots.
On a.
It's a ravioli truffle, simply served with cream and truffle inside and some Parmigiano.
When he told me it's truffles, I was like, oh yeah, great, we're bringing Pinot.
Pinot Noir and truffle anything is a classic pairing because the earthy flavors of the wine match the earthy truffles. Plus, the acid in the wine cut through the creamy sauce and complemented the salt from the cheese. Next was the same cuvée from the other day, IXSIR, only this time a 2011 vintage with 15 years of development.
2011. 2011, c'est un très beau millésime. Pour nous, ça fait partie, c'est le premier millésime vraiment, parce que nous on a commencé en 2008. Et c'était la première fois qui nous a vraiment marqué dans nos esprits le potentiel qu'on pouvait avoir dans les vignes au Liban.
When we say terroir-driven wines, a lot of people say it, but you get that here. And it's still very, very fresh. You know,
Because you have this slight acidity, and this is due to the altitude.
Non, mais ça c'est la chance de tout le Liban. C'est la fraîcheur et les acidités des raisins. C'est-à-dire, on a un potentiel au niveau de l'acidité, vu le climat qu'on a, qui est rare. C'est-à-dire, dans les autres régions, autant en Espagne qu'en Italie, tu n'as pas ce type d'acidité avec une climatologie comme la nôtre. Nous, on a des acidités qui sont magnifiques.
It doesn't exist anywhere else around us.
A lot of spices.
I get a lot of spice right away.
Chocolate, chocolatey, kirshy.
Leather as well.
Gabby then went on to tell what was apparently a very funny story in French. But since my French is rudimentary at best, I wasn't a part of the cool kids table.
Don't worry about me, guys. I'll just hang here with the wines.
Tomato tatin. Tomato obviously is peeled, baked for 3 hours, balsamico, olive oil, garlic. Then we put in mold with caramel, bake. A puff pastry with goat cheese, honey scented with lavender, served with a small salad with hazelnut vinaigrette.
The high acid wine matched the acidity and salt in the tomato confit, cut through the fat of the pastry, and the gamey flavors from the Syrah worked great with the savory confited tomato. This was an intense dish, and the intense wine was a good fit. Finally was a Ksara wine made from a French grape I'd never heard of.
Well, I brought the Souverain, which I call the big boy, made from 2 grape varieties. Arinal Noir, which is a cross between Cabernet Sauvignon and Tannat, and from Cabernet Franc. And the Arinal Noir was brought by one of the priests in the Jesuit on a very small scale. We brought it back.
I've
no idea what this wine's gonna taste like. I've never had this grape.
Let's put it on the test.
That tar, inky nose that is really, really fun. You're not seeing much of a color change.
After 15 years.
After
still
15 years.
having this color. Let's,
You see the rim, but you don't see the color, which is really wild because you taste some of the development and the tannin is still there.
Now you see why I call it the big boy.
The big, yeah.
That's
We've already had it in a decanter for an hour and a half, 2 hours. This is still going to change more. You took the blackberry that was this big and you smashed it to this big, and then you took that bite,
concentrated,
right? Concentrated.
Concentrated.
That's the best way to describe it. I get like olive character, black olive.
Got the chocolatey side of it.
Chocolate.
Still
red and
licorice.
green peppers.
This stunner of a wine needed a stunning dish to pair. Wagyu beef, anyone?
Wagyu MB6 Plus, grilled, sliced, served with a very simple mashed potato, vegetable, and a beef stew with wine reduction.
Rich, full-bodied tannic reds and steak are a classic pairing because the intense beef flavor works with intense wines, the savory flavors from the aged wine match the meat, and the tannin of the wine blends with the fat of the dish.
Where do you see Lebanese wine going from here?
The sky is the limit. The demand is here and it's increasing year after year.
So much of what I think consumers love, authenticity, indigenous grapes, dry farming, sustainability, is found here.
We have to focus on quality wines, and I think this is the future for Lebanon.
We can never compete in volume, but we can definitely compete in quality.
So many people still, I think, associate Lebanon with things that it isn't. I hope they see that it's just so much more than what their previous assumptions were, what they see on the news. It's this wonderful, beautiful place with not only amazing terroirs and amazing history, but amazing people. So I'm honored to be here with you guys.
Here I sat at a meal with 4 gentlemen who each embody a part of the Lebanese wine story: the historian, the trailblazer, the innovator, and the contemporary. Together, they're helping shape the future of the Lebanese wine industry. But more importantly, they're helping to show the world why Lebanon is worthy and ready to be in your thoughts and cellars for generations to come. I've had some important meetings in my life. Sometimes you don't know when they happen. The day you meet your best friend or your future wife. And sometimes you know a meeting is going to change you. This was one of those meetings. This is Eli and his son Alan and daughter Elit. And they are also Anters.
You like my town?
I love it.
This is your town.
I know, this is my town.
Well, technically they are Antars with an A instead of an E, because the immigration official misspelled our family name when my ancestors came to America. But regardless, they're family. They welcomed us into their home, and Ellie told me how there were dozens of Antars in the area. We tried to work out how we were related, which, like any large family tree, proved complicated.
Above him was Yvonne.
But we got there in the end. Brandon and I learned about their goals, their life, their jobs, and where they find joy. It turns out it's on a hill in the mountains overlooking the Bekaa Valley. And it's there with my crew, my friends, my brother, and my family that I opened the most important bottle of wine I've ever had. When I go to a new place, I usually feel a sense of awe and wonder, but I didn't feel that in Lebanon. I was more comfortable here than I anticipated. At first, I thought it was because I've seen so many new places in the world that maybe the rush was starting to fade. And while it's true that after 20 episodes, I'm more of a seasoned traveler than I used to be, I don't think that was the reason I was feeling this way. Can a place you've never been feel like home? Can people you've never met feel like your family? Is it too melodramatic to say I feel like I've been here before? If you've ever gone back to your ancestral homeland, maybe you felt similar. These people have the same values and beliefs you were raised with, the same resilience, the same hospitality, the same history, the same optimism, the same principles, and yes, the same homeland as you. So it's no wonder I didn't feel like a stranger, but more like a guest to a home I've visited a million times. Brandon and I had one last stop to make before leaving. Sachleh, the city where my family, the Antars and the Kassoufs, came from, where my ancestors grew up, walked the streets, and eventually planned their life in America. Remember that sense of awe I said I didn't feel here? Well, lucky for me, Brandon had enough for both of us. His first trip abroad, I got to relive that excitement of having your world turn upside down through his eyes. He was overjoyed for every moment, every feeling, every new taste and sensation. I've known him 30 years, and I've never seen him quite this happy. So thank you to all of you for watching and supporting and allowing me to give him, my family, and myself this gift. If I never filmed another episode, this ride was enough for a lifetime. I may not have known what I was walking into when I came here, but Eli did. Before I arrived in Lebanon, he told me this: your homeland is God's heaven on earth.
I sing about the nights with my friends, drinking all the wine in the fridge. I'll sing about my love for their kids, and I wonder how they're getting so big. I'll sing about the odds that we met in the first place, and how that I hope they know I'm happy we did. And I can talk about the blues that I get from the daily news. Predicate about a president presently being a fool. But in 100 years, and probably even less, no one's gonna care they existed. So instead, I'll sing about our trips to the woods, breathing all the fresh air we could. I'll sing about the smell of the fire and watching the flame till we're tired. I'll sing about how I pretend when I'm warm in the tent. Man, how I wish this was real life.
Hey, IXSIR. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you have a moment, follow us on Instagram. And if you really want to support, please consider joining Vino VIP on viasvino.com. It's our members-only club with a ton of benefits. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.